have internally yesterday. And so we're going to sort of go through the motions of what it's like for us to just kind of review all these things that we end up marking review committee, whether they're breaking changes or RFCs that we need to review or controversial design decisions for one reason or another that manifest in the form of issues or pull requests on GitHub. So we're going to start from the top here with RFCs. Keep in mind, anybody feel free to post anything you want in the chat at any time. We'll be looking in the chat, and if we don't immediately address your question, we will take a note down and keep that until later in the call. We're also going to be reserving some time at the end to talk about just the future direction of PowerShell Core 6.0, where we're going with it. But for now, let's dive into these RFCs. Steve, you want to take us away?
Sure. So I'm sharing my browser. So if you guys are on there, you can. Okay, good. Okay. So I guess we'll start with this one. RFC 11 referencing with static integers. We've already had some discussion. I'm trying to remember where we. Oh, we were going to just add our formal response is what we didn't do here.
Yes. Yeah, we didn't have a formal vote. We had an informal agreement that we were going to reject the RFC.
Yes.
Because
we talked about humanizer and didn't display.
Well, that was
a different one.
That was related, but not quite the same thing.
And the file names having.
Yeah, the main thing was the file names. I think the scenario we discussed.
Oh yeah, right.
Was that it's actually not that uncommon to have a folder of file names that are using numbers as a way to sequence execution, and this would be a break-in change for that.
Yeah, and that's exacerbated, of course, on Linux, where
you don't have
file extensions are even more arbitrary or useless, and people could legitimately name things with weird extensions that may also be the static invocation names.
Yeah, there would be a collision, the potential for collision with.
Does anybody, just out of curiosity in the chat, does anyone run a sequence of scripts that begin with numbers?
Yes.
I think he was asking non-committee members, but that is fine.
That's one data point.
Like we typically do that for the demos. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. So if you are creating a demo for somebody else to present or reuse later, you know which are.
Right.
Great example.
Yep.
All right. Yeah. No. I mean, we can. I think we're unanimous in the vote here. It was an awesome. I could say it was an awesome RFC. I mean, Kirk did a phenomenal job writing it and gave some great justification. But unfortunately, these are hard decisions we have to make occasionally.
So I think rather than spending time now to fill this out, we'll do this offline. This one, we can move on to the next one. This is the SSH remoting commandlets.
This one was extra fun because there's really no awesome answer for how these parameter sets should be built.
I don't know if we added a comment at the bottom. We also just did discuss this, and there's a lot of community discussion, which is appreciated. I think where we ended up is what Paul currently has checked in, and the SSH transport switch is optional, but is used to differentiate between the different parameter sets because WS-man remoting works differently from an authentication standpoint than SSH. I don't know if you guys had spent any more time looking at the RFC.
I looked at it and I didn't. I tried finding if there's a way to do parameter set without having a good parameter recommended. I haven't.
Hey, you're not coming through particularly well at the moment.
Yes, because Steve kept the speaker far away from me. No, I'm not saying.
Move closer and talk louder.
Yeah.
No, I think we should go ahead with what we have, even though I don't personally like having extra switch parameter, which is mandatory, but I don't see a way out yet. And if we have a way out, we can change it as we progress.
And I think
we unilaterally agree that we should fix the parameter set problem in general.
Right.
That parameter sets get extremely unwieldy, and that there's the fact that this kind of problem continues to come up means that we should probably address that in a generalized way.
Yeah, I agree.
So this is the one where we had decided that mutually exclusive parameters was a good idea, but we could fix it with just better help, better syntax, like get command dash syntax or whatever.
Yeah, so we should fix the formatting and output of
That's a hard
parameter
problem.
sets in general. It is a hard problem. I think there is from way back. We should dig through the platypus issues because somebody, I want to say Keith Hill, wrote a great example of what good output might look like, and we should definitely take that and run with it. Keith, if you're on the call, looks like he's not, unfortunately, but yeah, or somebody did this. But anyway, we should dive into that at some point. Maybe craft up an RFC. If anybody in the chat's willing to maybe take that on, I will certainly have a pointer here in the notes to that comment that I'm talking about.
Yep, and again, the two things are not mutually exclusive. We should certainly look at both of them. One's for more the authoring side, and one for the consumption. So let's move on then. This one is also work in progress from a coding perspective. I'm trying to remember what we ended up on. Why we needed to review committee.
Yeah, so this is a globbing of native commands, so there's no globbing on Linux.
I thought we ended up that we were going to glob on Linux to be consistent and not glob on Windows to be consistent, and we should just write that up, I guess.
And not using the verbatim string, the argument, the --%, that really shouldn't come into play. And this person's comments are not in the current implementation about globbing only takes place if the argument's unquoted. So, but anyway, yeah, I think we pretty much all agreed that.
Yeah. We just need to write that one up as well.
Yep.
So that's the end of the RCs there, Tag. There are actually no issues. This seems wrong, unless that's really true.
There's a space review committee now.
Oh, did you change that?
Yep.
Fixed it back. The mistake I did of.
That was harder to type in the query.
Joey's link doesn't work, because that was what I was using.
Sure.
All right, let's just go through these. You found coding command or function.
Oh, filing.
We'll see. I hadn't looked at this one yet.
Jason added review.
So I had added.
It's recent.
Yeah, so this is get file encoding seems like it kind of belongs in Microsoft PowerShell utilities module, but potentially, and then there was a suggestion that we go beyond that quite a bit and
do convert.
Well, the file there's a Unix utility file that tells you like the file type more than just the encoding of the file, of text file, and there is porting that from some other implementation basically, and that kind of really opens up the question of what we want to bring into the core versus what should be an external thing. And so,
but can't we do it on when you do a dir in the file system provider, the output type to show the encoding as well in the formatting?
Yeah, that could.
So you don't need a separate command.
File info.
It
could be an extra property. Yeah.
To say, and we can decide whether you want to show it in default display or not, but at least it's on the object.
Although that seems like so many files are not text files, so the encoding it doesn't. I mean, binary, right? That's not something you're going to ask for all that often. Adding it to every file seems.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no real cost for a note property except for remoting.
Somebody's saying something.
That's brute.
issues.
Yes, very quiet, Bruce.
I'll try and yell louder. The problem is that you have, like, if you've ever looked at how, for example, Notepad figures out the file encoding, it's an extremely complex process that requires you to scan ahead in the file quite a bit. So
Essentially the whole file, yeah.
yeah, so get file info, like doing a get child item and then tacking it onto the file info object means you instead of just getting the directory information, you actually have to open the file and read most of it to figure out what the encoding is.
Oh yeah, we're
That
definitely
would
not
be-
going to do that. We had some code like that for the symbolic links, just to open the file, and that killed perf on get child item. But it would be
So-
computed property
Yeah.
if we implemented it that way.
Well, even if it's a computed property that only gets computed when you want it, it still has to go and open the file.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I mean that's kind of the whole point.
So I really don't think it's a good idea to try sticking it onto file info.
I agree.
Having the file command makes a lot more sense.
So then the question is like having a file command like the Unix command, is that something we actually want in PowerShell, or because we want it in Windows, like it's
Right.
already kind of there on Unix, right?
Yeah.
So
Well, the question is, anybody has ever asked for it in Windows?
I would imagine they have, but they may not have asked us.
yeah,
I mean, there's an example in the comments here of someone coding it up from 6 years ago, so it was worth it to someone at least to write the thing on Windows. My gut just tells me on this that like we're going to have a lot more file encoding problems as we go cross-plat, and it's going to be useful to occasionally peek into that thing all the time because
definitely.
you're just going to be switching between all. I've already dealt with the UTF-8 versus 16 problem a few times, just cloning people's repositories for modules and stuff. So
Yeah, we have a problem in general on Windows because we write Unicode by default. So having something that lets you actually detect the encoding, most files on Unix are either UTF-8 or just plain ASCII. But Windows, because it's fully Unicode from the start, you end up with a lot of encoding problems. So I think it's very important to have a tool to figure out what the encoding is.
Okay. So I think I can agree with you guys. I think we should take more a holistic view about how we want to manage encoding, deal with encoding in the future.
So encoding yes, more general utility no. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes,
Um,
from my side.
Yeah, because the other thing with because there's not universal use of extensions on Unix, you need a tool to figure out what kind of file something is. On Windows, everything is done with extensions, so you can just look at the extension and more or less figure it out. So the generalized file becomes much less useful. I used to use file all the time on Unix, but I've never felt compelled to use it on Windows because I just look at the extension.
And then we're also seeing that this is common enough that it should be part of utility then.
I think it makes sense there. Yeah.
Yeah.
and it's also so lightweight. I mean,
And I think it makes sense to, one of the comment was about have a convert to and convert from, or convert files from one encoding to another. That would be helpful as well. I don't know if it's possible in all the cases.
Do in-place encoding?
So
Because we
convert
can
file
already,
encoding or convert string encoding.
well, outFile already lets us set the encoding. So if you read the file in with get
I will say that 2 weeks ago I tried to guide someone through the process of converting a UTF-16 text file to a UTF-8 text file in pure PowerShell, and I got it, but like it definitely was a little trickier than it should have been in terms of the.
It would be as simple as get content-raw piped into outFile-encoding.
There might be some subtleties there that a command would solve.
There was some subtlety there, and I think I had to go through strings still for some reason.
I mean, if you have a ASCII file that is in some particular code page,
angled encoding.
Code pages.
Right. I don't know. I can see some scenarios where a command that might solve some problems for people that the obvious command pipeline wouldn't.
And when like you see the word convert, then it's very obvious to you, like, oh, I can do it. Yeah. Making the jump of saying, oh, I have to use out file to convert from one encoding to another. We might start with a simple function which just calls out file under the covers, but that was the thought of saying when you have a convert to, you say, oh, I can convert, and by looking at out file, it's not obvious that you can convert from one encoding to another.
Yeah.
So from
discovery. So you have to think a little bit.
Discovery
it's not hard, but it's not obvious.
Yes. It's not hard, it's not obvious.
And we got some additional data. Thank you, June. Yes, in help, it's certainly very helpful to have all the encoding stuff, help files, and also that Bash on Windows, not even going to Linux, just having Bash on Windows present, it makes encoding an issue as well. So, just more fuel.
So I think
having a tool that handles the BOM as well would be very useful, as we found with WMI.
You mean like MOFs?
Like MOFs. Because the spec says no BOM, but...
In any case, I guess one last question for this one for me is this obvious enough for someone to take this and implement it, or do we need an RFC for this? It seems like we don't need an RFC.
I don't think we need an RFC, yeah.
I'd say forget no, but I think convert possibly. I'd like to see what a parameter set looked like on convert.
And even on get, are we going to support
just three parameters, right? Input, output, and the encoding?
That's what it's.
Well, or for the input encoding? For whether the BOM gets included or not. All the various and sundry mangled file formats.
And there's probably one from the pipeline, and taking strings, and there's probably file info objects from the pipeline, and dash path, and dash input object also.
But that's code review stuff. That's not necessarily design.
I think Jason's saying is that there's enough precedent that they could follow to figure out what the right view is. And then we can catch it through code review if it was missed.
We can talk about it at PR time. That's fine.
Okay. Yeah, I think let's go with the PR, and if that's unclear, then we can have it write it down.
Kirk says, these commands are really, really useful, including in down level. Many PowerShell users have had them as functions since V2 or earlier. Wouldn't this be best served in a separate module that could work on down level systems? If it's baked into utility, then it's PowerShell Core Plus only, when there is no need for that limitation.
So
good points, Kirk.
You put it as a separate module that can be downloaded anywhere and used anywhere,
rather than part of utility, or rather, can we just make utility
open source?
Well, it is open source, but make it version agnostic.
That would be the better way to do it, wouldn't it? Is make utility version agnostic.
Which I think will probably dovetail into the conversation we're going to have later in the call here.
Yeah.
Especially as we convert all of these modules. I know ISASNov's been pushing to convert a lot of this stuff to binary, and that's going to be interesting with the whole .NET Standard 2.0 thing. So.
All right, so I'm not going to add that in this comment, and we should just treat that as a separate thing. Because I think it does make sense to have.
I'm taking notes here and writing it.
All right, let's go to this one. This is another favorite of mine, anyways. So the short version here is on Windows. There's file extensions. On Linux there isn't, and currently PowerShell requires the extension. So I can see kind of both sides of the argument. Where on Linux it's unnatural to have the file extension, but then it means that you can't take that same script and run it on Windows without adding it back. But I'm also thinking, like, if we can lower the barrier on Linux for adoption, then when there's a need to be cross-platform, they'll figure it out anyways, or script analyzer can catch it. So is there any reason to require it at this point?
I think the last time we discussed, we said we should not require, but we should support both.
Yeah, but right now we don't support both.
Right.
And I think we also said we should make sure that PowerShell get is saving scripts with the .ps1 file extension, unless explicitly, given an output path that's doesn't have one.
So I'm trying to imagine how get command can be fast. Now we have to open the file to see if it's external script or if it's... I mean, I guess if we're only doing that on everything with the execute bit set, maybe it's not that bad. But it does mean reading every file for get command.
Yeah, that does stink.
But if it has an execute bit set,
then we need to look at it's going to have to be shebang, right?
Right.
And that's how we tell, is it a PowerShell script or not. We're going to read the first line to see if it's shebang PowerShell.
To show it as an external command versus a script.
I mean, we could just run it and then rely on starting a new instance of PowerShell, but that's not what people expect.
Yeah.
I think.
I agree.
And that's slow as well, right? That's going to be 300 milliseconds to start up and then run the script instead of just run it in the current process.
Yeah, if you don't. Yeah. So at get command, if you're not opening, then you treat it as external command. You run time.
So when running it, we can do the right thing, but
right.
Get command should report external script, and that'll make it more expensive.
So are we now leaning towards not supporting it because of perfect impact?
I think we have to measure it.
Or we could try it. It's worth trying out. And
yeah.
I mean, does anybody have any idea how often a pure Python or a pure Ruby script is executed without a file extension? I mean, I know you can do it, and I know that's what the shebang is for, but I still feel like in the wild I see a .py and a .rb all over the place.
Yeah, Python, though, is not a shell. I think there are different expectations for a shell. That you should be able to create a script and run it as an external command.
I'm just saying it's more analogous to all the bash scripts without sh on the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we're a shell.
And there, the difference is in bash, you inherit the environment. So even if you're creating a child process, you're getting all the stuff that's in the current process, where we wouldn't inherit anything other than the environment, but that's...
Well, we wouldn't inherit the environment, but we don't use the environment as a primary variable store.
Exactly. So more thought, I guess, is required, or someone can experiment with the implementation.
So yeah, is the line in the sand that we're going to remove it and see how get command perf fares?
Yeah, and that's going to tie into like tab completion as well. Like, so if command completion suddenly gets slow because get command got slow, that's obviously going to be unacceptable.
All right, I'm putting that down here. Or do you want to just post that here in the issue, Steve?
Well, you could. Well, I don't know if you're looking at my screen.
I got it.
All right.
Got it.
And how about we treat it, if it
I see.
PS1, 2 for the performance, we just keep it as external script. We don't look into and let the underlying.
For .ps1, yeah, but for
without .ps1, then we.
That's one option. And consider it an
launches.
External command, and then
Right.
that's certainly an option.
And that way.
It may be surprising to people, but
Yes, but
Yeah.
the trade-off between performance and surprise.
you get to choose.
Right.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, exactly. That's actually a good point.
Well, we could treat it as an external command and create a new shell instance.
Right.
But the other thing,
This is something you have to document so people say, hey, I know.
Wait a minute,
that.
shouldn't that just work today? It's got to be
That's
I think
just-
they're asking for this without shebang.
Yeah.
They said without this, we can't use scripts as executable, as adding a shebang to the start of the file without a PS extension will fail. I don't know. That was one of the comments by Anand.
Oh, it hangs. Okay.
Yeah. And the point is,
Interesting.
That would just fix them.
this
the
completely
hang.
breaks the way we work on Linux. On Windows, it is fine. We are used to it.
Oh, it didn't hang. Type initializer, some exception, something. Yeah, that just sounds like a bug.
So let me.
I mean, yeah, creating a new process is how that works.
Right.
We should.
But it doesn't work.
Next line.
Should I use semantic?
Nah, that's fine.
This is Markdown, isn't it?
It is
Yeah.
Markdown.
Yeah,
But
all right.
As long as they have the shebang. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Then, I forgot to pick up the tags for the other one.
That I can take off. Just want to put committee review, right?
Yeah.
so while you're making those edits, Joel asks us, can we ship the utility 6.0 utility module in the gallery? And,
That was the segue.
Yeah.
I am recording questions for later right here, and I think that's probably one that we will dovetail with the 2060 conversation. Unless you want to address it now, Jason, you can go for it.
I think we've discussed this before, and that is kind of our longer-term plans. I don't know when we get there.
No, you should have.
But having all of the modules be installable independently is...
That would be ideal.
Weird. Yeah. All right. We already fixed this one. Okay. Let's move on to the third one. Oh, they moved it. Okay.
Item symbolic link to directory. Oh yeah, this one.
So we got a bunch more data now, which is very useful from the community. Thank you very much for that.
I think, isn't this one just about getting something back into Windows now? Like, we needed the tests so that we could see if the fix in core applied to Windows and go check it in Windows and get the code into the next window?
No, so this was mostly a question I put why I'm re-adding review committee here. So basically, we still only delete, the contents do not get deleted. The big problem is that we throw this warning, or an error actually, that you need to do -force over just to remove a symbolic link.
Yeah.
And I was saying that's technically a breaking change for us not to do that. But I would say that's probably the right behavior, is not to you have to use force just because you're trying to remove a symbolic link. I don't know what makes a symbolic link stuff that it needs a -force. I mean, it feels like any other file to me.
Yeah, I agree. Because it's not actually removing the target folder.
It's not removing the target folder. It's more about the error message. There's also a bug that we should probably just fix here, which is this. There is a mismatch between the tag specified in the request and the tag present. I couldn't get that to repro personally, on 6.0 at least. These guys look like they're doing this with 5.1, so yeah, maybe we do need to port this back. But yeah, it's mostly, I mean, my question to the committee at least is just the -force thing and whether we need to require it, especially now that symbolic links don't require admin or whatever.
Right. Yeah, I don't think it makes sense to say -force, and without -force it will not ever work. That seems wrong.
It seems wrong to me too. Does anybody have any thoughts on that in the chat?
Reactivated on October 21st by Andy for Windows PowerShell. I think that's why we originally even started looking at it.
Well, a lot of it was just trying to get the repro. Like,
yeah,
it was not the easiest thing in the world to repro. Weirdly enough.
Well, that's why
I think if there's an issue on 5.1, we should probably have a different issue.
But
on that and use this one for the
fix the 6.0 behavior.
Yeah.
Force. So we agree that when you do a remove on a directory which is a symbolic link, we should just delete the symbolic link, not the actual content, and even say -recurse -force should not touch the original item.
Yeah.
And you should not require -force at all.
Agreed.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, you should never touch anything underneath the symbolic link.
Right. And right now we don't even delete it because somebody said, yeah, The symbolic link was never actually deleted by remove item, and they had to go to CM.
Yeah, even after the dash force, and I think that's the 5.1 bug that we got to fix.
Okay.
I want to move this to beta.
Yes.
At least symlinks are much heavily used in Linux.
Right.
All right. I think that's the end of that list. At least the one. Oh, and the PR one we had. Did we change that to? There was one PR that was tagged committee.
Yeah. Empty key name. There's one.
Ah, yeah.
All right. Let's talk about this one.
All right, so this one was coming from project lock JSON. They have an empty string as one of the keys in a hash table, and so when we try and convert that to a custom object, we throw an error saying you have to have a non-empty string as the property name. So this particular PR is just allowing the empty string as a property name, and that's weird, right?
It's weird, but allowed in JSON.
But
And
JSON it's a hash table. It's not an object,
Yes.
right? It's like how do you
index into it.
yeah, how do you reference that property?
You by square bracket empty string.
Yeah.
But it's not a hash table. When you create a PS custom object, it's not a hash
So
table.
you have to say dot
You would have to do .psob
back take empty string
something
or
weird, right?
Yes. It is an edge case.
But so these
have a
changes would allow that. It's not just for the convert JSON command.
Yeah. Oh,
So it would be now a new general purpose feature in PowerShell
yes.
that PS object or any object can have the empty string as a property. So is that a reasonable thing to allow in your language? In a hash table, so keep in mind it's different. In a hash table, sure, allow anything you want as a key. You could allow null as a key if you want.
Yes.
But as a property name, do you want to allow things like an empty string?
It's certainly not a best practice. The question is, you're asking whether we should allow it at all.
Exactly. And what are the alternatives? So, yeah, I mean, if you scroll down, I think I might have
Yeah, you said we can
suggested
reserve.
reserving
You said
something.
Reserving something, we didn't indicate whether that is the literal empty string or something like that, or PS empty string, or.
Well, I mean, yeah, PS something. Yeah. And so if we reserve something, we can map it back to JSON without any problems.
Yeah.
So there is that benefit.
But how does hash table PS custom object to hash table kind of things work then?
So
Some code, just heads up, somebody posted some code.
yeah,
in
no,
the
I
chat
just
here
looked at that and that.
Yeah, it's the $x equals PS custom. Yeah, no, they fixed the.
But
Got
so
it.
that's actually not doing what.
That's hash table
That's
to
not
PS
quite the same
object.
thing. That's going into the hash table. The dot syntax. Yeah, that.
We can't see your PowerShell, Steve.
No, that's not PowerShell. That's the
No.
link call. Well, I wanted to see it too.
Program. Yeah,
All right, fine. I'll look on a different screen.
PS object is not PS custom.
Yeah, so PS object is not PS custom object. So when you do dot double quote using that syntax, we're indexing into the hash table. So it's just a shortcut for hash tables. It's not actually using a property
Right.
in PS object.
And in hash table you have ways around by doing square bracket.
Yeah, and you could have used the square bracket to index or the
Right.
try get or
Yes.
get value,
Get
whatever.
value.
So yeah, it is different. Yeah, I don't know, it feels weird to me.
So you want to do it not
Like
generically on custom PS objects, but specifically on the JSON.
I mean, I guess it's kind of more of a question like, are we letting people do something that might be, like, they didn't mean it, and it's better to catch that as an error? Will we be preventing errors by not allowing this? Like, if we start allowing it, people are going to start doing things they didn't mean, and it silently works, sort of, but not always, sort of thing.
But I don't know if they would accidentally do this. It seems like the use case here is more like hackers trying to obscure their scripts.
No, people script all the time, right? Like you have null, and then they go do add member, and null gets converted to the empty string, and now you've added some property with the empty string instead of
I see.
what you really.
Oh, and Joel posts a good one here. That makes sense to me.
Oh, $my key.
Yeah.
And that.
All you need is my key to be null, and then you've accidentally got a null key.
Yeah.
All right.
So let me ask: if we don't do the request that is support, what are the scenarios? Is it just the JSON scenario that is broken?
Just JSON right now, yeah. Convert from JSON.
And there's a real file.
And there is a real file that is using that feature.
Yeah.
Does XML support null keys?
You mean like for attributes? I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think you can just have an equal sign or have.
No, yeah, I can't see how you could do that in XML. That just is weird. I mean, XML's not a hash table. Like,
No.
JSON is just a hash table.
Yeah.
It's probably wasn't really meant
You can't
to
have
work.
an empty element XML either, so I don't think XML would allow this.
And
It also has schemas.
if JSON has it, I'm guessing YAML will also support something similar.
Kit, would you be willing to just, for like 30 seconds, explain why? I understand the scenario of having a null key in JSON, but why have that? What's the?
You mean why would they use that?
Yeah, why have the null key in JSON? What's the higher level scenario?
I imagine it's like
just-
a default property, and you know how it's in you have like the default indexer in CLR or whatever. It's like this magic name.
Oh, you're saying
Default property.
project.lock.json has one.
Yeah, that's where this was hit, and that's legit.
It's like a default sort of thing. It doesn't really have a name or whatever. It's just this thing that's always there. It's a reasonable scenario. It's just it doesn't fit well with properties.
No, but they could have called it. They could have given it a name.
So .NET has this notion of a default property, and it has to have a name, and you can actually put an attribute if you don't like the default name that they use. But in C# you use this.
Yeah.
Right. On the
Sure.
and so you don't actually use a name, and then the C# compiler converts that to item.
Sure.
And if you don't like item, then you can go put an attribute and give it some other name.
And somebody pointed that in registry also you have a reserved name called default.
No, I know, but registry has a lot of funny stuff as well.
So the fix could be just in convert from and convert to JSON commandlets.
If we reserve a name, yeah.
If we ever take YAML,
then we have to do it in the YAML as well.
Well, I don't know. Did we find whether YAML supports this?
I haven't.
JSON does, because I looked at the spec and they don't say they support it. They just don't say anything about not supporting it. And basically, here's what a string looks like, and a string can be empty, and a string is a key.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's as much as I hate to reject the PR here, it sounds to me like the danger to the language is a lot greater than generalizing the fix for just the JSON commandlets. So sounds like we should just fix in the JSON commandlets.
That's my thinking at the moment.
So what is, like, we maybe should have a greater discussion about it, but what's your spitball way to, like, capture that in the object that was a null key?
If there was a null key, just, give it a reserved name, some ridiculous name that nobody's ever going to use. Starts with PS.
Underbar PS reserved or PS.
It could even have white space in there. I don't care, right? Like,
just call it not really empty.
PS default, PS item. I don't know. You can call it whatever you want, and then
Joey, when we reach, we'll throw that problem to you to come up with the name.
Because naming's hard. You terrible at naming.
Very good at naming. You call it PowerShell.
I mean, there's some places people might have noticed in the code where you actually use a GUID in a name just so that it might never conflict with somebody. Yeah.
But
seems like we should propose a name here, though.
Yeah.
Try to submit
Something involving a couple underbars, like dash dash empty.
So Kit's asking how are we going to work with invoke web request? I think when you convert an object back to JSON, it recognizes that and converts it back to the empty string.
Yes.
Yeah. Converts it back into empty and convert from puts the reserved keyword.
Leave it empty for now. No pun intended if that's a pun or irony. And until we put something in here.
Is TBD?
TBD.
But then what if he actually puts TBD in there?
Oh, it's very okay. Kit's still going. He's a wealth right here. So hey, I've got the thing with the reserved keyword. Now I try to post it via invoke REST method or invoke web request. Do we need to fix those commandlets too to understand the reserved keyword and convert it back to null?
We said when you do convert to JSON, if there's a reserved keyword, we'll convert it into an empty string. And when we are doing convert from, if we see an empty string, we'll add it as a reserved keyword. So we'll do it in both convert to and convert from.
No, but I think they're saying that invoke web request takes a body that's a string, and if you just put your own JSON in there, well then.
So Joel's saying we have commandlets that implicitly convert to JSON. How does that work?
Which commandlets convert?
I don't know. That's what I'm.
Does it take an object and then internally does something?
If.
By the way, guys, just point of order. Like, feel free to unmute yourselves and hop on and talk to us. You're not necessarily relegated to typing as quickly as you can in the chat.
If then they should have should do the same magic.
Well, we should have magic that takes care of that, right? If we had a JSON type accelerator or type or whatever.
I mean, I would say that this is
just
like
it's a public API which handles this, and those commandlets can call that API. So they don't have to re-implement, and they can get the benefit of the work we have done.
So, just one just immediate thought here is this feels like a corner case. Like we've had these commandlets around for a while, people have been using them, and this is the first time it's come up. Like compromising the language in any way for a corner case in JSON doesn't quite feel right. Like it could be, but
I agree on the language basis, but I do think we should come up with some solution to the corner case that's
make the corner case
reasonable, even if it means changing, adding the corner case to, the 7 or 8 commandlets that would be involved in that scenario. Like,
oh yeah.
I think we should do it.
I was just trying to maybe think through Joel's point about things maybe we don't control, other things. Like,
right.
Do we need to provide a more generic mechanism to make this problem a less of a problem? And I don't know. It's kind of feeling like maybe no.
And Kit said, just had a comment. I understand. Yeah.
So what are we saying here now? It seems like
I think we're saying everything you probably typed up.
Yeah.
And I think we need to not close the additional issue, and so the issue that goes back, like we need to, I'm posting here that we should also handle the invoke web request scenario.
That .NET does a conversion to a .NET object, and what is that empty key look like?
I don't know.
But are we using JSON.NET?
We are.
Okay. We should maybe investigate that, and if they've already set some kind of precedent, we can just follow that.
Yeah.
That sounds reasonable.
Or does it make sense to get this functionality in JSON.NET if they don't have it already?
I think they do.
They do everything, right?
The error happens when we try to convert to our format. JSON.NET isn't complaining about this particular locked JSON file.
But today we error out if you have empty. And I'm guessing that's on our side to say...
It's on our side, I think.
Yeah, that's on our side. It's
argument.
I think JSON.NET itself, I think it handles it.
Okay.
We just have to see.
dense.
Spelling's hard, you know.
It's hard. Good thing for red squiggly. Hey, is it completely wrong?
Yeah.
Is it only E's, right? Only E's.
There you go.
Hey, look at that.
Can you just put the recommendation piece as a separate line so it doesn't get
Right.
lost?
Here, if you want, I can
Yes.
also do that.
Or
What is this? Oh, I thought that would work.
star.
Yeah, but underscore is supposed to also provide underline.
Oh, this is italics.
Oh, weird. All right.
Okay, so we got about 10 minutes left. I do want to make sure we address the big discussion thing.
Go for it.
But are there other questions or that big one question to discuss? Because I thought people are just listening to us and we haven't given a chance to ask questions.
Yeah, no, we can. Oh, I hear Josh Castillo. You're a little quiet.
Sorry about that. Should have been on mute.
No worries. Oh, okay. So yeah, I mean, does anyone just a general does anyone have any questions that they wanted to ask to the room before we jump into this sort of futures discussion real quick?
I suspect questions will come up after we go into the futures discussion.
I suspect that as well. Yes.
10 minutes.
Let's get going on that.
Yeah.
Cool.
10 minutes.
All right, so here's the gist, everybody. We believe that PowerShell Core is the future, that Core CLR and our cross-platform direction in getting PowerShell 6 on every platform, all the Windows Server, Nano, Mac OS, as many Linux distros as we can possibly support, is a huge undertaking. And as part of that, we believe that our investments in developing the future of PowerShell are better spent on PowerShell Core and PowerShell 6 than trying to backport everything into a full CLR Windows PowerShell. So essentially what we're saying is that we want to bring a few key critical new features to Windows PowerShell 5.2 in the next release of Windows, specifically the PowerShell remoting over SSH work in order to create good interoperability between Windows PowerShell and PowerShell Core. And then PowerShell 6 would be core only, and that would be where we do all of our future development. Now, the key points here are that Windows PowerShell would be supported for the foreseeable future under the support agreements that it's going to continue on just as any supported Microsoft product, where we fix the really egregious bugs, obviously any security bugs, and continue to service those bits. But the big strategy that we're trying to employ here is to leverage some of the work that's going on with .NET Standard 2.0. So if any of you have seen yet, hopefully there's a really great blog post on what .NET Standard 2.0 is, why we're doing it as a company. There's also a great FAQ on GitHub. I'm going to post both of these things in the chat real quick. But essentially, what .NET Standard 2 enables us to do, or will enable us to do, is essentially say, hey, I've got some binary code that's targeting the .NET Standard 2.0 profile, so to speak, that I can compile binary libraries that will work against both the full CLR, the .NET Framework 4.6.1, as well as .NET Core vNext. And so we want to create an ecosystem where you're able to build PowerShell modules, binary modules, script modules, whatever you want, that should just work on both Windows PowerShell and PowerShell Core. So that's kind of where we're headed. That's what our thinking is. I'd love to hear feedback. Do you guys have anything to add, Steve? Did I hit all the major talking points?
No, I think you got it.
So just to recap, we're saying, okay, next version of Windows PowerShell is a minor release, 5.2. It's going to have some bug fixes in it. It's going to have PSRP over SSH, and then after that, really we're doing all investment in PowerShell Core on GitHub, PowerShell Core 6.0, and then we really don't want to do a production release of PowerShell Core 6.0 until we're able to move to .NET Standard 2.0 there. And once .NET Standard 2.0 is available, we'll be aggressively pursuing, getting those .NET Core bits into PowerShell Core, so that we can start building these sort of cross-CLR PowerShell modules, which dovetails nicely into Kirk's question about whether we could ever ship a utility module on the gallery. I think ideally we're creating a utility module that targets .NET Standard 2.0, and then anybody on machines down level with any kind of .NET framework that supports .NET Standard 2.0, I think it's going to currently is like 4.6.1, should just work with all those binaries, and we don't have to worry about compat or which CLR you've got or what platform you're on. You should just be able to update that module and get all the new cool stuff. June has a question about ETA for 5.2, and not a date but a time frame. First half of next year, I think. Is that accurate, Steve?
Let's just say it aligns with the next major version of Windows update.
Yes.
Whatever date that is.
Saying that PowerShell 6.
You mentioned.
What's that?
I don't know if any of those dates have been released though.
Yeah, the dates have not been shared, but right, we're going to be aligning with RS2, which is the next sort of major Windows Server, Windows Client update, which is targeting the first half of next year.
We have another comment from Josh saying you're saying that PowerShell 6 and vNext scripts will be compatible with .NET Standard 2.0 and .NET Standard vNext. I don't know anything about .NET Standard vNext, definitely .NET Core vNext. But yeah, I think we're saying that PowerShell 6 today is not compatible with .NET Standard 2.0 because it doesn't exist yet. But yes, that is the goal. Does anybody have any feedback on that? Is that I saw a love.NET Standard. I'm happy, Joel. That's I do as well. It's going to be the future. Cool. Sounds like a good plan. Awesome. Thanks, Eugene. All right. I have one last question, I guess, in the absence of other questions, which is where do you guys want us to put the notes and recording for this stuff? I think we've got a couple options, and this is to the committee as well. Like, we could put this in the regular PowerShell repo or the PowerShell RFC repo. I know that the DSC resource community call has started putting their recordings on YouTube with just a PowerShell logo there because putting binary data in a Git repo is silly.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any strong feelings about that? I think is
so
YouTube and the RFC repo good?
We have a PowerShell and DSC channel on YouTube. We can leverage that, right?
Yeah.
So notes in the repo and video, or recording on YouTube.
YouTube with the link.
Yeah,
the notes.
that makes sense to me as well.
Yeah.
And I see a few RFC repo acts, so that works for me. I have one last question from Joel. Do we expect PowerShell Core will ship in the box in the future? And if so, does it replace Windows PowerShell? Currently, no. And our big thinking there is, and this was also some of the thinking around why not to upgrade Windows PowerShell 5.x to 6, which is that the code base has moved very significantly, and we want to make sure that Windows PowerShell is always the PowerShell in full Windows editions for legacy workloads. And so, not even legacy workloads, but just existing workloads. So, all your Exchange, SharePoint, SQL Server, all that stuff's just going to continue to work with all of the idiosyncrasies of 5.2. and then PowerShell core sort of for the vNext workloads, but no plans to bring it in box yet.
And
when next? Oh, go ahead.
And if it ever comes in box, it will not replace. It will be a side by side.
Yep.
That gives people and products and ecosystem to have time to move to the one, and in fullness of time, we might do it. But the first one, whenever it comes, if it ever comes, will be side by side.
Yeah, I think the idea is that keep 5.x stable so that for legacy workloads we don't break them. And then make sure the side-by-side and getting PowerShell 6 core installed is dead simple so that people can just leverage that.
And just a few more questions. Next session, I think we're planning on doing these monthly? Does that sound right?
Yes.
Yes. So next session, I'll have a blog post with a summary of what happened here and links to everything, as Alejandro suggested, and then also announcing the next date, which will be sometime in January. Eugene also asked if we've discussed the move to PowerShell 6 with any of the teams that own those workloads traditionally in Windows PowerShell. There are a couple teams that we've discussed moving to PowerShell 6 with. Exchange is not one of them yet. But obviously, as you guys drive PowerShell 6 adoption, the case for all of those technologies moving to Core CLR and to .NET Standard and to PowerShell 6 becomes much easier. So, we're kind of in early days right now, but definitely we want to get as many workloads as possible on 6.
And just to add on it, we reaching out to the workloads and saying, hey, just move it, versus their customer asking them to move, there's a big difference, and the customer side always wins. So if you really want and you have good reasons for a particular workload to move to PowerShell 6, make a case with that team. We can try, but your voice is heard louder than ours.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. This is way bigger turnout even than I expected. Really had a great time with everyone. Hope that you enjoyed it as well. You guys have any closing words?
No, thank you for that.
All right, well, thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks for joining us.
All right, I'm going to stop.
Thanks, you too. Have a good one.
Yeah, thank you.